especially special because Sandy Stansfield is our own Director of Membership and Industry Research. So, Sandy, we've been working together for probably more years than we want to admit.
13 years?
Oh my gosh, 13 years.
Yeah.
And Sandy, as a part of a larger research and data analytics department, I think she does such an important role of bringing research, either in partnership with other research companies, or doing research within our own membership, to give us ideas of what's going on, what are the trends, what we should pay attention to, and conversely, what should you, the coaches, coaching client, pay attention to. So, Sandy, from your perspective, well, you're doing it. So why do you think research is so important for associations?
I think it's important for a number of reasons. We need to keep up on the trends, right? We need to understand what's happening with our members, with our membership base, and not only that, with potential members. You know, the landscape is always changing. You know, ICF, we're going through this, working with trying to get more Gen Z coaches and so forth. So keeping up on the trends, understanding what's happening. And, you know, one thing that you and I work so well together is ICF is a knowledge-based association, right? Part of the decisions, how we make our decisions, is through research and all of the research we do. And it's just really important.
Yeah. And many associations are, of course, happy to do the research. And some may not have vision or resources to partner with others. And we have a good fortune of working for quite a time now as well with the Human Capital Institute, and in particular, PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, why is it healthy to bring those partners to the equation?
I think we've been working with PricewaterhouseCoopers since 2006. I think they've done over 15 research projects for us. I think in some research that we do, especially the industry research, it's not just about ICF members. It's also about non-members. It's truly a global study of the coaching profession. So I think having that expertise on their end for the non-members, you know, part of one of our big studies with PricewaterhouseCoopers, the global coaching study, we're talking about economic information. We're talking about number of coaches. We're talking about annual revenue. And that's something where I think any association that's going to do research, those are sensitive numbers, and having that third party that knows how to calculate that knows how to work with that data, it makes the coaches feel more comfortable, and it makes us feel more comfortable too, because we do have that third party doing it.
Yeah, you're so right. Data is the data, and nobody argues with the data. But the data is interpreted and needs to be interpreted in the context of what may be happening in a world, what may be happening in a specific geography. So what fascinates me about those studies that we do is that we try to slice them and dice them every possible way. So what are your favorite cuts?
Favorite cuts. Region is always interesting. It will be, I'll go into something and look at the data and say there's going to be a big difference between regions, and there's not, or there is. It's you never know, but their region is always interesting. I think right now generation is very interesting too.
Yeah.
And you know, when about 5 or 6 years ago, when we were looking at generation, the percentage of millennial coaches was not that high. It has grown in the last 5 or 6 years. So there's actually something to look at now. It's higher in what we kind of call emerging regions for coaching, like Eastern Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Middle East and Africa. It's higher millennials. Coaching isn't quite as established. So I think those are two of my favorite. Sometimes it does depend. We look at our coaching, we ask questions about whether their primary specialty is business versus non-business. That's always interesting too, because there's a life cycle that coaches go through that, non-business versus business. And that's always interesting to look at the data that way as well.
Yeah, I remember it changed quite a bit during the pandemic.
It did.
Yeah, we had the shift. So this is always a little bit of a conundrum with research. Do we repeat similar questions? Do we add something else? Of course, the repeat allows us to analyze the trends, but the circumstances around us are changing so quickly. So, a couple of years ago, we actually decided to have a different approach to our research. Do you mind sharing?
No, not at all. We were doing two major industry studies with PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I'll single those out just because it was a consistent thing every 3 to 4 years. And then COVID happened, and those initial studies took long. They took about a year and a half to complete, and they were massive. They're 22,000 survey responses. I mean, just massive. COVID happened, and we're like, we need to know now what's happening in the coaching industry, what's happening with our members and non-members. So we talked to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we kind of shrunk everything. We didn't have the field time open as long.
Mhm.
And we did this whole snapshot study in probably 2 to 3 months. And we still got 10,000 responses. Crazy, I know. 10,000 coaches responded. So we did that first snapshot study, and then we did another one in 2021. And that's when I think, I came to you and we started talking. It's like, let's start doing this for all of our industry research. Let's make it more frequent. Let's make it very topic specific. And let's have data that's relevant all the time. And so that's kind of what we started. The mental well-being, what we're going to talk about today, is the latest topic. There are other questions on the study. There's some evergreen questions, we call them, that we ask all the time. Some questions specifically for a certain group of coaches, internal coaches, that we asked this time, but the actual topic was mental well-being and coaching.
Yeah, I remember this COVID study, and I also do recall that the first, I should say, results of the first study were not good. It was a grim picture of what was happening. And it, I think, was brilliant, and I think it came from your department, is to repeat that study maybe 6 months later?
Yep.
Because we all felt a little bit of a difference in how people felt, and that study showed us that there was significantly more optimism in the outlook, and that people were adjusting, and they were adjusting well. They were also telling us what would be useful for them to adjust, and what would be useful to their clients to accept the new way of doing business.
Exactly.
Right? So I think that was exactly the impetus for doing this shorter snapshot series. I think the one before was about artificial intelligence, wasn't it?
It was basically the future of coaching, AI and coaching. Yes, that one. And also we did that in conjunction with our global coaching study. We kind of shrink that too. So that was a dual purpose one.
And that was another one that we asked the AI question way back when, and it was like, don't let it come, don't stop it, just stop it, right? And the second survey was like, it's here to stay. We need to learn how to do it. So again, it's not only giving us this research the insight into what's going on, but I think gives us as an organization good ideas of what product, services, short summaries we can produce, right? And share with our members.
I agree. And I think, the mental well-being, when we just talked about doing this topic, it was back in, I think it was last December. But it was like, we want to stay ahead too. That's the great thing about these snapshot studies. The topic at the time, maybe, I'm not sure, but as mental well-being was like, we think that's going to be a really good topic. And during the past, 6 months, it's really just blown up, and everyone's asking about it and talking about it, which is great. So it's very relevant right now.
Yeah, we hear about, some even call it mental health and mental well-being crises. And of course, in the coaching field, it's a delicate conversation about never crossing the line to the need for medical expertise and intervention. So I think there was a little bit of building the baseline for us of where we are right now. And again, so importantly, what our members are telling us, what would be useful for them moving forward. But back to the question I asked you earlier about what are your favorite cuts? Any differences geographically, demographically, with responses to that question about what coaches do in the field of mental well-being?
There's not. Yes, there is. There is and there isn't. Okay, I've got a few numbers in front of me, and just to let everyone know, this is the first time we're talking about this study.
Yeah.
The report will be released on September 11th. So I don't have all the numbers up here yet. I do have a few notes in front of me. We may talk a little more in generalizations today, but the report will be available September 11th, and we're excited about that. So we wanted to kind of bring it to you, give you all a little preview. There were some differences in regions. We asked coaches about, do they talk about mental well-being with their clients? 85% said yes, they do. That is a discussion globally. So then we kind of dug in a little bit further, and it's like, what are the reasons? And the reasons, 78% said business and career issues. Additional 60% said personal issues, and 56% said general mental well-being. So then we kind of looked at things. This is where the regional information gets a little interesting. So the highest for business and career issues was Western Europe. That they were actually on the high level of that, above the average, whereas the Middle East and Africa were below that average. Now, I don't know if that surprises you at all. That was about career. Personal issues, Middle East and Africa were above the average.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and Western Europe and Oceania were below the average. Now this doesn't surprise me as much as the general mental well-being. That was 56%. Asia was well below, and that did not surprise me. North America and Oceania were above. So we're going to probably dig further into this, where we talked about established versus emerging regions for coaching. We'll do a white paper or something on that, because that's where this starts to come in a little interesting, not necessarily by region individually, but by clumping them in those two categories, what we see. So I don't know if any of that surprises you. It did a little bit for some of them, but overall, I was surprised North America wasn't in more of the high above.
Right.
But
if I recall correctly, just scanning through the report, it is also that younger coaches having, in many cases, younger clients encounter this conversation more frequently than their more senior colleagues. Isn't that right?
Yes, and you're absolutely right. And that's not a surprise.
No.
We kind of expected that, but again, with this data and being able to slice and dice in many ways, we'd like to jump in that and maybe do a little more digging into that as well to see what those causes are and so forth. But yeah, mental well-being in the younger generation is much more open about it.
Yeah, it's much more present.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you said, this particular study, as any of our studies with PwC, have a set of evergreen questions, and they're just basic demographics. And only recently, though, we started asking questions about ethnicity, isn't that right?
Yes, we added. We went through a long process. We wanted to do it right. As a global association, we wanted to make sure we were asking these questions right. So we were asking questions about ethnicity and race, gender, and disability, and more information like that. So yes, that is one area we haven't looked at this data yet. We will, because I know that was probably your next question, but that is something we will, once this report's released. There's not a lot about that in the report. The beauty of this study and all of these studies are we can release a report, but we can do white papers. We can do other things as well, and that's one of the areas we will probably look at is ethnicity and race, as well as some others, to see the difference there. And we're tracking that information on our own member research as well. give a little plug for member research, and we've been asking these questions for a year. So hopefully we're going to start seeing some trends and some changes in diversity in that amongst ICF members as well.
Right. I'm excited about this research because in any case, being AI, mental well-being, or race and ethnicity, there are hypotheses. And sometimes the hypothesis is being created based on the best information available at that given time.
Yeah.
But a year later, it's not true anymore. And we're still repeating it. So I think that this is so important, again, back to the importance and the value of research, that we stay on top, and especially in those areas where we have keen interest of seeing where the trends are going, or if there are hypotheses that we may not be 100% aligned with.
Yep.
Then we can certainly continue doing that. As you know, Sandy, my favorite study is the global awareness study.
Global consumer awareness study. Gotta love talking to those consumers.
Yeah, because it is the voice of the consumer.
Yeah.
Coaches, of course, they beautifully report number of clients they coach and who those clients are. Yet the true satisfaction, if you will, knowledge and satisfaction comes through the voice of the consumer.
Yeah.
And I've been quoting that number million times because I'm very proud of it, that over the period of time since we did the first study, 2010, yeah?
Yep. Yeah.
Then the most recent was 2022.
Correct.
The awareness of coaching increased by 23%.
Yeah.
And that's staggering, but if you consider that it grew to 73%, then it's really something to talk about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's that study is one of my favorites too. It's it looks into, it's not just about the awareness of coaching, like you said. That's the main reason for it, right? But we also start looking at, we kind of take people down different paths. Have they been coached? If they haven't been coached, what's prohibiting them from becoming coached, or in a coaching engagement? If they have been, was their coach credential? Was, all these different, why did they decide they wanted to be coached, and what were their outcomes? Usually that's very different. It's like you may go into a coaching engagement for a certain reason, but you're going to find other things, and you're going to come out on the other side with other things as well. So I do love that study too. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I think we're coming up on 4 years, so maybe we can update that one again. And
we certainly should. What I find fascinating also with that particular study is especially the demographics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We know from those studies that younger people are more aware of coaching. They are more interested in being coached. They frankly demand coaching in a professional environment. And then, we hear as much talk about aging populations, and our more senior fellow citizens say, I don't need coaching.
No, I'm done.
Yes, they do. They do. They live longer, they are healthier, and they have purchasing power.
Yep, exactly. So, one of the great things about that study too is, I think PricewaterhouseCoopers told us when we first started doing it, we did not ask, it's a panel study, so we're looking at 30 different countries. We have to have some kind of control over that. And I think it's several thousand surveys per country, but we started surveying Gen Z a couple of years ago. And the data that we had was some of the biggest studies they ever did with Gen Z. We actually have like little mini studies within each. So that's another great thing. This study by generation is extremely interesting. And we can't wait to repeat that again.
Right. I see a question in the box about the definition. Yes, believers, we spent 2 months making sure that we have a definition that is acceptable. I'm just looking for it in a study.
I actually have it in front of me. I have it right here. Would you like me to read it?
Reading it and maybe putting in a chat box later.
Yeah. For purposes of this study, and like Magda said, we kind of it took us a while to get to this definition. So mental well-being refers to a person's emotional and psychological state of overall health and happiness, encompassing resilience, positive emotions, and effective coping with life's changes. So that's the definition that we used for this study.
Right. And if I remember correctly, Sandy, we actually consulted with the American Psychology Association, with a couple of medical organizations, so that it's not just aware definition, but the definition that would be met with approval,
Right.
Especially from a medical field, because as we know, this is the place where we potentially interact in overall.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that you guys know is that ICF has a plan of creating a more robust work around mental well-being, and we seriously call it mental well-being on purpose, not to even suggest that we're going into mental health and especially mental disruptions in what we're trying to do. So with again help of more academic colleagues, we'll probably engage more into what can be done, especially so the coaches can be better prepared. If not, work with a person with some mental well-being concern, but also know when to refer such a person to a medical professional, counselor, and not to cross that line, as it is so critically important, and frankly spelled very directly in our code of ethics that this is our responsibility.
Exactly. One of the things that came out of the study that we haven't talked about, and it's not in the report, we rarely in these industry studies do we ask an open-ended question, because we are getting 10,000 responses. It's a lot to go through. But for this study, we felt it was important to find out what resources do coaches need. And we're still going through that data because it's a lot of it. But I think that's important too. And one of the things that came out of the study is coaches said they need to know what's not working for people, other coaches, versus, and including what is working with other coaches, but also what's not working. So I think we're going to get a lot of information from that one open-ended question, what resources they need. And we will probably, ICF will probably take some action on that as well once we get interpreted and get all that coded and everything.
Well, that's fantastic. And also, it kind of goes even to the entire system, because this is not only for the existing coaches, but what can we do bringing that knowledge to current coaching education providers, so maybe they can fold it into their offerings, preparing future coaches with that lens as well. All we read in an entire universe is that this problem is not going away. We also see that in younger people, and we're talking kids, it is quite prevalent. So I think that topic is definitely here to stay. And conversely, there is also artificial intelligence that can help in that sphere as well. So
definitely.
That's why we need to know what's going on in the marketplace, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
This study will be released September 11th, as you said already. We will keep digging, so stay tuned to whatever else ICF will be doing. So, Sandy, any future plans for future studies other than my favorite awareness study?
Well, we're going to work on the awareness study for maybe next year, but definitely for next year. One of the things we decided to do when we did these snapshot surveys is every other year we will do the global coaching study and do a smaller topic with that. That's when we did the AI. So coming up this year, we are doing our global coaching study. I can't remember the exact number, but we started that one in 2026. So I think this is our 6th or 7th iteration of that. And we will have data and reports available the summer of 2025. And I think it's a good time to do this study. The study tells us a lot about the number of coaches, annual revenue, coaching, more about the actual coaches themselves, coaching clients. And I think it's important, and it's a good year to do that because something special coming up with ICF next year too. I think we have an anniversary coming up. So good time to see where we started to in 2006 to where we are now.
Yeah, plus I think it is a really good time because um, we did the previous study right before the pandemic. That was fun.
Mm.
So when we released the study, it was a picture of coaching before the pandemic.
Literally right before the pandemic.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah.
Then we had those two shorter studies during the pandemic, and then we're on the other side of a big disruption. So I think that would be interesting to see the sentiments and the
Mhm.
thinking, especially to the future, as we are emerging with different attitude to delivery of coaching, different application of coaching, and as we said, different generations either delivering or receiving coaching.
Exactly. So excited to get started on that.
Always talk to the researcher when you want to get excited. Well, our time is as always over.
I know.
Maybe thank you so much for joining us today and giving us a little sneak peek into that survey, into that study. And yeah, we do invite you to our research portal. You can find the academic research there. You can find the industry research as well, that being done by ICF. So coachingfederation.org, and I hope that it is a useful tool for you, useful resource, and I hope you will continue to use it.
Thank you for having me, Martha. Thank you so much.
Study, Sandy.
Thank you, and maybe we'll do this again next year when we have our study released. Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank
Thanks
you.
again, and thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.